if you are serious about having an arts career, and you said this to me as well, like it takes sacrifice, it takes like dedication and discipline, and sometimes you can't go out drinking with your friends, or you can't go to that party because you want to like actually like really hone your skill and your craft. Welcome back to Friends of Sublime, the podcast where we explore the intersection between creativity, consciousness, and the human experience. Today, I'm joined by Kate Florence, a UK-born, Australian-based 5-1 projector in human design. Kate is an intuitive painter and the host of the podcast Nitty Gritty, and her work moves between intimacy and instinct, tracing how emotions take form in gesture, color, and the poetry of everyday life. In our conversation today, we are exploring the blurred lines between art and healing, the sensitivity of being a projector in a predominantly generator world, and what it means to create from honesty rather than ambition. So, Kate, thank you for joining Friends of Sublime podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm very grateful to be here.
So as a friend of mine and someone that I've known for a really long time, I thought it would be amazing to invite you to share about your processes. You're a really famous painter now, and I have seen the evolution of you having all the skills, but not yet building your painting business, so to speak, and now seeing what you have created, how your work has evolved, you as a person, and all of the things in between. And I also want to highlight that Kate is a projector. She's a 5-1 projector. It's called the seer. And that means that when Kate feels something intuitively, she already has the answers. So she's very wise, and usually it takes some time for a projector to maybe know. The intuition wise, she has it all there. And so something that I hope Kate will share now throughout this podcast is the evolution of trusting your instincts and building a creative business in a way that feels good, and then kind of how you have navigated moments when it doesn't feel good, what you do and so on. So I thought for the people who don't know you, maybe you can just share where you grew up and kind of your family environment, schooling, and little things like that.
Yes, I would say, okay, so I grew up in the UK. I grew up in a very like idyllic environment, very like rolling hills, very quintessentially English, very safe, very quaint. And my family are like, both my parents are creative. My mum was a knitwear designer, my dad is a graphic designer. I guess I had a pretty conventional upbringing. I was always like playing outdoors, dressing up in like fun outfits with my brother, playing. We were always very creative and silly. I'd say silliness was definitely, and still is very much, a part of our household. I'd say my schooling process is like pretty mainstream, boring. Like I didn't really love school, to be honest.
Were you already creative in school? Like, were you doing a lot of creative subjects? Were you good at creativity, so to speak, quote unquote?
Yeah, I was doing creative subjects. There was never really like one thing that I felt really drawn to. I always did like a lot of different things. It would be like working a lot with fabric, with textiles, with sewing, with drawing, with painting. But I never really felt like I could find like my true authentic style. Like I was spending those years at school just kind of like looking in books and like copying what I saw, or like exploring what I liked, and visually looking at what art I liked, and then trying to like recreate that within my own kind of like style. But I feel like I still never really like managed to do that. But on reflection, I can see how those years like helped me define what I liked in art.
Nice. And would you say that if both of your parents are creatives, would you say that your household obviously value creativity as a real job? Because that's a lot of creatives having that experience with parents who are not creative. They actually don't even think that their child's creativity is worthy of like a job, so to speak. So I guess that they were kind of supportive of you going into the creative field.
They were. They had more like design jobs on paper, so like I feel like design is a much more like straightforward approach. It's like you study design and then you graduate and then you are a designer. Whilst I then ended up going to art school and studying fine art, which on reflection I feel mixed about. And when I graduated art school, I actually felt angry because I was like, I'm not qualified to do like one thing on paper. It's too broad. I couldn't apply for a design job or a photographer. I wasn't a photographer. I wasn't a designer. I wasn't like specifically were able to work in one place. So I think my parents were always supportive, but they were also like, it's hard being an artist. Like, there was some concern there because they themselves are creatives and not necessarily like artists in the way that I am thinking or I am now, like an artist. And I think when I first left art school, I didn't believe it was even possible to be an artist because I had no money and there was no opportunity, I felt like, at the time in art, and I just couldn't see how I was able to like afford a studio and make like any work because I was just working to pay my bills.
So hearing all this, I mean, this is kind of when you and I originally met here in Melbourne, Australia. So Kate moved to Australia and I was living in Australia at the time. And when we first started talking, I remember you kind of saying these things. You were saying that you didn't really believe that you can essentially make it as an artist. That's what I
Mm.
heard when you said things like, it's hard, it's struggling. Like for me, when I heard that, I was thinking that it came from this kind of subconscious belief system of unworthiness. And now I'm hearing that probably it came from your parents, who most likely were maybe not feeling like their creative careers were paying them enough, right? Maybe they felt like they were
Mm.
overgiving and kind of underpaid, which is a very normal, common experience for people in different creative fields, right? They don't feel like they are ever getting paid enough,
Enough. And I feel
right?
like the general consciousness and conversation around an artist is like the general feeling often spoken is like poor, starving artist. So like
Exactly.
they, because themselves weren't artists in the way that I was wanting to be, they've been conditioned to believe that like being an artist as a career means struggling long
Yeah.
term.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so I'm very pleased to know. To give a bit of a background story is that at the time when me and Kate met, we made a life drawing class, and I saw Kate's drawings. And I was like, wow, this girl got skills. And we ended up having an ice cream. Do you remember that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yum, black sesame ice
Yeah,
cream,
we
I
went to have
remember.
ice cream, and I was working as a interior architect, and I was working on a restaurant project, and we needed art for the project, and so I thought it would be amazing to have Kate work on or create those art pieces, and so as you hadn't lived in Australia very long, right? You were quite
No, I
new
think it
here.
was within my first year. It was just a few months in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she then, agreed to this commission, and there was a number of smaller paintings, and it probably wasn't Kate's actual style, it wasn't probably your actual style, but it was a starting point of like
Mm.
earning money from making art. And so then Kate made those pieces. My client for the interior architect was very happy. And as I kept working with the same client, we then got other commissions, or I got other projects to work with them, and I could then commission Kate for more. So this is my little piece in the puzzle of what Kate then did. And so maybe you want to share, because I also remember that as all these things were happening and we became friends, I was diving really deep into human design. And I then
Mhm.
find out that Kate is a projector. I'm also a projector. And I felt like there was this moment where I was like, I see you. I see who you are, I see your skills, I see your talent, and I have many friends who are making really good money from being artists. And so I felt like, wow, what if Kate actually just took on, art projects and art things and moved with that. And so you did. You took that plus for sure other things that wasn't related to what I was being able to commission you. And you invested your time and money towards your art career, right? And
Mm.
so that is an amazing like evolution and breaking the glass ceiling, so to speak, right? You were like, I'm not going to be confined with these ideas of being poor and struggling or not even being an artist and therefore working in another job. So maybe you can share that journey. Also, you decided to move to Australia because of what? Like, how come you were here to begin with?
I moved here because I was working hospitality in England, and I just knew from like a straight off from the beginning, I was like, okay, if I'm going to do this job, then I want to get paid more, and Australia have a much higher wage. And also then I was like, my chances of being able to have an art career are so much higher if I don't have to use all of my time making coffee. So yeah, I moved here and I had literally £1,000. I had no connections here. I didn't know anyone. I was just like, right, I'm going to work at making coffee. It's a job that I know how to do and I will just figure it out. When we met, I still didn't have a studio yet because I remember making those drawings for your client on the kitchen table. I had like all my paper drawn out, and yeah, I was just at that time I was like establishing a style,
Yeah.
and that was like very simple line work, very minimal, still quite playful, but yeah, I'm not a minimal person,
Yeah.
and so it was interesting juxtaposition at the time of like me establishing this style and it connecting with people. And I think yeah, like over time I started to recognize like, oh, people want to buy these, or I was always like, and I came to here with maybe 100 followers on Instagram on my art page. And then yeah, was like taking photos of the things I was doing in a very informal way and just like posting them on Instagram. And then I was also just taking every spare minute I had and using it to create. And I remember having, when we had this conversation, we had so many conversations of you like pumping up my tires and making me realize like, okay, maybe it is actually possible to have a life creating, and being an artist just can maybe support me long term. And you were pointing out maybe these belief systems that I was so strongly living within. I remember you saying to me, the more time you invest in like yourself and your work,
Yeah.
the more you will get out of it. You know, it's like you give, the time you put in is what you will receive back.
Yeah.
And and you know, you were saying, look, you're using a lot of your time like making coffee, and
Yeah.
you're going to do all these like shifts in hospitality. Like, what if you took some of that energy or some of that time and you invested it more in like your art practice, and you actually believe that like that will pay off?
And did you
It's
take that advice?
I did. I
Because
think
I
it
don't
took
remember
some
if I
time.
asked you about it after.
Yeah, I think it did take some time. I feel like with everything, don't know if this is the case for everyone, but for me, it's very much like I hear things that people tell me, but I can't fully act on them until I
Yeah.
feel like it's the right
Yeah.
time. And it has to take some digesting time to like realize, okay, maybe there's something to this. I need to like explore these things. But yeah, I definitely always take on what people say, but it just like, yeah, definitely I saw very quickly that there's so much truth to that. Like, if you are serious about having an arts career, and you said this to me as well, like it takes sacrifice, it takes like dedication and discipline, and sometimes you can't go out drinking with your friends, or you can't go to that party because you want to like actually like really hone your skill and your craft. And I know that you said you've done the same, like creating
Oh,
your,
it took so long to get
yeah,
somewhere, you know? You
yeah.
gotta like invest, invest, invest.
So much, and sometimes you're
Yeah.
not seeing necessarily, you're not seeing a return or a reward straight away.
Yeah.
But I think like being put under the test of like how much are you willing to give before you are receiving in such a big way back. Like
Yeah.
I think with any creative career, it takes so long to fully feel that you can like get a proper return on what you're creating.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So having said that, you had this internal shift. So you felt like there was external voices, mine being one of them, and other people for sure. And then you were like, okay, now this shift is happening inside of me. I'm going to start investing into me and my career.
Hmm.
And you started making other choices. For people who, you know, maybe you are working in hospitality and you're listening to this right now and you're like, I want to be an artist, or I want to be a singer, or I want to work as an architect, whatever, you know, your creative field is. I mean, something I was told for interior designer, interior architects, and architects in general by other big architects was that it took 10 years. That's what they were saying. That is direct advice from people who truly made it in the career. And they're now, you know, the two gentlemen I'm mentioning, they are like, I think they're 55 to 65 in age. And they said to me both separate occasions that I needed to wait 10 years for the moment to like essentially look back and say, if you made it over the 10 years, essentially being able to live off your career gradually. So you have this kind of interlock moment where you're going from maybe your old job into this new self-employment slash small company or whatever you're doing for creativity. And they said that like you've got to persist for 10 years. And after 10 years, if you didn't make it, meaning like you can pay your basic bills and your basic life, then maybe, you know, consider changing career essentially. But if you can make it, so even by 10 years, if you still didn't maybe make this like huge amount of money, you're like, oh my God, I'm just swimming in cash. They were like, well, that's where the moment where things are going to shift because you persisted. You had you know, the ambition to persist and trust yourself in this. So
Hmm.
obviously it hasn't even been that long for you, but the point is that you at some point had this internal shift. You listened to your instinct, your intuition, and you started investing into your art more and more. Because I remember you exhibiting at different art shows and stuff where you brought your work, right? And you had to
Yeah.
spend all this time there, talking to people, connecting, creating kind of like, I guess, like a follower, selling artwork for, I would say probably quite an average price at the time.
Yeah.
Just like get the art out there, right?
Mhm.
And that's kind of the grinding time, so to speak. It's also the time if you work with other creative stuff. Like I don't know how many projects I did the first 2 or 3 years, which are, I feel like I lost money on some of the projects because I just spent so much time doing them.
Yeah.
But they were the so-called portfolio projects,
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. They leverage like your awareness and your experience and your vision moving forward. Like they
Yeah.
helped you in the long run.
So when you started doing those, I'm just trying to kind of map out this. So you were working as a barista and then you were like, I'm going to invest. You had this internal shift and invest in me and my art. And then how long roughly did it take for you to go from like, I'm a barista investing in my art to I can now pay my basic bills as an artist, not like more than so, just like that transition. How long was that? Do you remember roughly?
I would say probably it was about 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, well, that's a very short period actually, if you think about it,
Mm.
like in the bigger picture of life.
Yeah, yeah, and it
Like,
was never like I never expected it to be that short,
yeah.
and it had and within that time and since that time, it's still been very up and down.
Yeah.
But I would say that because I moved here in 2018, and I remember COVID, like 2020, 2021, I had my first exhibition,
Yeah.
and that was first solo exhibition. Sorry, I'd had
I
exhibitions
remember
before
you
that.
telling me about this.
Yeah, in Sydney.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
was so proud of you.
And it was the time where everyone was like, they couldn't travel and they were like spending so much money on art. And I sold my exhibition, I sold out like 17 pieces before the show
Wow.
opened. But at the time, like my work was very affordable as well. So like it was,
Yeah, but still, that's incredible.
yeah. And I was,
Well, you didn't tell me this part. I would have danced for you.
Yeah, so it was very unexpected. I remember being in total shock. I had never done like a solo exhibition before. It was like all the work was made under very like intense circumstances of me like getting locked out of the state and then finding a studio, not even having a car, walking to like a cafe every day, working there and then painting in my studio afterwards. Like I was still working a lot to pay for the supplies to create for the show. And then I got this like big chunk of money from the exhibition selling out, and that was when there was like a full pivotal moment of like I can breathe, I don't have to like work and every day. And at this point my body was getting very exhausted working hospitality. It's so draining and energetically, physically. So yeah, so it was like such a relief for me to just like have this money and be like, okay, now I can fully like pause, take a break and imagine, well, where do I want to go? And as soon as you have funding behind you, the possibilities are so much more endless. And then through that energetic like experience of feeling more financially free, and by the way, like it was $20,000. It's not like a huge amount of money.
But it was enough for that moment.
It's enough for that. It's the most money I'd ever had in my life at that point. And I was like, okay, this feeling is like limitless, like then suddenly your brain expands into all these ideas. And when you're not clutching onto like, the finances of like, can I afford that? What does that cost? Like it's like this tense energy around money. As soon as that like block is lifted, then like so much more money comes. And as soon as you're too focused on like the complexities of like money, I think when you grip too tightly, like things don't flow naturally.
Yeah, the subconscious and the nervous system just tightens up. And you don't have that trust anymore. Yeah, I know. So the other question I had then is that, because this is quite common, when someone gets a large amount of money, if you haven't had it before, you often want to spend it fast because it doesn't feel safe to hold it. But maybe you had already done enough inner work for that not to happen. So may I ask, with that money, when you were using it or how you were using it, did you feel that you were essentially spending it on all these stepping stones towards expanding your career? Or was it like one of these moments where you kind of almost freaked out because you were like, oh, I got a lot of money now and like, what do I do with it, Because there's also that thing, once you have the money, like, what do you do with the money, you know?
You feel there's a level of uncomfortability, which I still sometimes have that because it's like the worthy piece like shows up. You're like, oh, I don't know what to do with this money. I feel a bit uncomfortable. And sometimes that does still show up. I think at the time there was some of that. And then I realized like what possibilities, what doors it opened for me. And so there was no a desire to just spend it on things that I didn't need.
Yeah.
But it was more so like, okay, like I'm going to take a break. I'm going to go. I went away for a few weeks and just had a break. And then I came back and I reestablished myself and got a house and a studio, and I bought a car. I could like just the basic
Mm.
human needs.
And this was in New South Wales?
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is in Byron.
During COVID times,
Yeah, I
essentially,
was
or
just
end
on
of
the
COVID?
tail end of COVID, yeah.
Yeah.
And so then once I had that money, I was able to, you know, pay for a nicer frame, and I was able to feel like maybe I could work with some galleries. Like some galleries have a system where they like want you to pay to use their space. So there was like these things that it kind of like opened the energy flow of like, okay, I can have an exhibition, I can afford to hire this space, I can afford to make a new body of work, and I don't have to trade so much of my time to make coffee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Kate did take that money and definitely put it in the right places, because what happened after this pivotal moment is that I would say that you started shifting in the kinds of paintings that you were doing, right? Yeah.
Mm.
For me, like having said what you said now about your line drawings and your kind of minimal aesthetic, which by the way, I love very much, but I can see now looking back at your evolution that you are more true to yourself now than ever. And the work that you are creating now, the body of works that are coming out, are playful, they're fun, they're like characters. It's colors, but it's like earthy. At the same time, they have these like pops of colors and a kind of storytelling vibes, you know? I
Mm.
think they're so beautiful. And I think they're more beautiful because I see you in them. You know, I see this is really Kate and this is Kate's voice.
Mm.
So long story short from that is that you also moved later to Noosa and you rented a very big art studio space.
Yeah.
You took a lot of initiative. Maybe you can share a bit about that, because you kind of became the queen of art in many ways, you know? Yeah, but you really
I don't
did.
know
Like,
about that.
yeah, I mean, you know, you live in Noosa, by the way, in Australia. Kate, there's a lot of information online about this as well. But yeah, maybe you can share that journey, because you've been taking all these steps, and then you have this other very big step where you rent this big art studio space, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so I've been in Noosa for about 4 years now, but the first 2 years of that, I was in a different space. But it's interesting, I remember I was eating, like one of the spaces next door to what was our studio was a sushi restaurant. And I went there and I was eating with a friend, and I said to her, before I had any studio, I was like, this is the perfect studio space. This warehouse was perfect. Like this would be what I want as a studio. And that just shows the power in saying things out loud, because within 1 month, I'm walking past the same sushi restaurant and I'm looking, and the space next door has the door open and there's like this big open space and it's being used, but it's like not clear what it is. And I'm like, oh my God, this is perfect. It's got beautiful lights hanging in there, like plants. And I go in and I ask like, what's happening here? And because we were still in weird sort of like COVID-y times, there was an event space, and then they weren't able to like fully function as a event space. So I asked them like, hey, out of desperation, because I had all these commissions and I had projects waiting and I didn't have a space. And so I asked them like, hey, would you mind if I just like set up a studio here and obviously pay rent, and then I can move everything when you have an event? And they said, yeah, sure. Like we'll happily do that. These beautiful Argentinian people who were just like so welcoming and warm. And yeah, it was perfect. And then from that, other people joined me and it just became this studio. And then we eventually were there for about 2 years, and then we outgrew that space between the three of us. And then I kind of came to this crossroads. This was this time last year, or like August last year, of like, okay, I'm at a crossroads now where I can take the leap of believing in myself and trusting that I'm going to continue to make what I'm making, if not grow more financially in what I'm earning, and trust that my art will support me. And taking on a really big space with a crazy amount of rent, like, is such a scary feeling, because you have to have ultimate trust in what you're doing, and the stability piece just has to be there so strongly. And I kind of knew that like once you take that leap, you will be rewarded. And there was in my head, I was like, okay, if I do this, I'm sure that like pushing through this fear will only bring better
Oh my God,
things.
I feel like it's like that every time. Every time you take a big leap,
Yeah.
when you're truly like in your center, it feels so scary, but at the same time, you're like, I know I'm gonna make it. You know, you have
Mm.
that like, I'm scared, but I'm gonna make it. I'm scared, and then you kind of go for it. And then yeah, what happened? Because I haven't been there personally, but from what I've seen on your social, it looks amazing. And
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
So it's like the biggest fear you ever feel, and then when you do it, you're like, "Okay, I'm just gonna do it." And you know, it's a 3-year lease, like, I'm locking in for quite a long time. And then I was like, "Okay, look, I'm gonna do this." And so I took on the lease on my own, and then I, created the space for all of us. There's, like, 4 artists now that work downstairs and 2 upstairs. So now I'm kind of, like, managing a studio and allowed, like, within that, like, half of the space is where I create, and then we have this, like, really beautiful community of artists where we're all full-time painters. And so from that experience, it's just been so nourishing because you're experiencing kind of similar things together. You're sharing like stories, you're sharing experiences, you're supporting each other, you're asking each other questions. Even if you're like, hey, like this color, what do you think? I'm not sure. And I don't know, like we see each other every day. We're there 5 days a week. We
yeah.
like treat it so seriously. There's no questions. Within 1 month, I was like, this is the best decision I made. Like, I'm so happy I didn't give in to the
To the
fear.
fear, yeah. Oh, I'm so happy you did that. So essentially, in that context, for anyone who's thinking about investing in themselves, you were pretty smart about this as well, though, because you took the leap, but then you obviously don't have to cover all that rent. So you have people paying you rent.
hmm
So in the end, do you have kind of a free space? Do you have a partly free space? Like, how is that helping you? Because obviously, you were the one who took the chance. So there has to
hmm
be something in it for you when you have people renting from you.
Mm.
Is it working out, or are you
In
being
this
so nice?
situation, no. In this situation, it's just come from a place of like, I felt like it was morally wrong for me to take money from other artists. And I felt like if I made the rent any more expensive, I wouldn't be able to fill the
Ah,
spaces. And also, the rent is already so high that for me to then add more on top of that, it felt like wrong because I felt like it would be very hard to fill
yes.
those spaces. So everybody is paying like for what portion of space
Yeah.
they have. So if they don't have much, like too much money to spend, then they have a smaller
Like,
space. For me, the energy of like giving back is very important. Like
yeah.
I can feel a bit like being an artist can feel a bit self-serving sometimes. And I feel like now I'm in a position where I'm able to use some of the money that I'm making to create a space for other artists to inhabit and be a part of. And yeah, like I don't necessarily like feel like financial gain has to always be at the center of things. I feel like energy
Yes.
comes
And I
back
think
to
this is
you.
beautiful and
Mm,
a really good lesson because money is not all forms of energy, right? It's one part of that.
yeah.
And it sounds also like you are understanding your role in returning
Mm,
the gifts that you have. I mean, you're very successful in what you do now, and you've had lots of exhibits, and like Kate does is like limited print releases where I purchased a few things which I think are beautiful, and I'm looking forward to framing them. We're still moving around, so we're gonna frame them soon.
yeah.
And she's doing a lot of other stuff in terms of like you did this thing I saw on social called Table Talk, right? Was that
Yes.
kind of your launch for your new body of work, or was it
Yeah.
just more like a community
It was kind of a
event?
bit of both. So it was like it was to launch the collection of my just recent print collection. And it was the first time I really invested money in, I guess I've learned to see my art as a business. And
Yeah,
so whenever it comes to marketing or you selling your work, like you have to treat it marketing like the same as you would any business.
yeah.
So we created an event around the launch of my print. So the themes were food. And then we felt like it was the perfect fit to create like a long lunch event with the works hanging in the background. And then also it felt really important to me because obviously that is to promote my work, that I really wanted to create a space for lots of artists to come together because I feel like in Australia it's such a big place. I have a lot of friends on Instagram or a lot of friends interstate and we never get together. And I've never like, some people I hadn't met them. You just friends from Instagram talking to each other and sharing experiences. And I just felt like it was really important. And I felt like I was in this position financially to be able to facilitate bringing people together. So I like hired this big house and we all stayed there for the like 3 or 4 days.
Oh wow,
Yeah.
that's so
So like big
beautiful.
sleepover club.
Like a big pajama party.
Yeah, it was amazing. And so we did like lots of like dinners and like movie nights and just like hanging out like properly. And then I hosted the lunch event, which was in a daytime on one of the days in a venue that I booked. And then we invited a lot more people from the community as
Wow.
well. And it was really special. I feel like the same with the podcast. Like I feel like we'll move on to talking about
Yeah.
podcasts at some point, but that was also a key part for me was like I have a lot of conversations through having a podcast that I feel like we all struggle with the same things as
Yeah.
artists and same insecurities and same thoughts. And I think it's so important to share these things together. And so it was so like important for me to feel that I'm using the money that I'm making from my work to like give back in a circular way. And I had so many unanswered questions
Yes.
as a young creative and I could not get like answers from anyone. There was no clear path. There's no clear way of like understanding how to do it.
Yeah.
And I would have loved to have like some form of podcast or information of people like
Yes.
sharing that I had
A
you, I had my
reference.
friends, I had like people saying it to me, but there's no like, you know, it's not like common knowledge
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
same way.
exactly.
Yeah.
So for the people who don't know about Kate's podcast, it's called Nitty Gritty. And for how many years have you been doing this? Quite a while, right?
Like 2.5 years, I
Yeah.
think.
He's the
Yeah.
experienced one out of the two of us when it comes to podcasts. And it's a great podcast and I would highly recommend listening to it. How often do you have episodes coming out?
Every second week, yeah, so every
Oh,
2
that's
weeks.
nice. If you actually share a little bit about Nitty Gritty, that'd be great.
Yeah, so it's kind of links into what I was saying before. Like I had so many unanswered questions. I feel like I realized how much my practice evolved from sharing a space, from
Yeah.
sharing a studio, and from being together with people. I just felt like I really wanted to create a platform for this kind of open conversation. I also feel like there's so much mystery in the art world, in the
Yeah.
gallery world, in like the hierarchical kind of like sort of there's a lot of like economic inflictions of things that go on within the art world, and I just felt really like I was in a position to try and share
Yeah.
my thoughts as someone who's very opinionated.
Yeah, but also like, I mean, coming back to human design, you are a
Yeah.
projector. Like, this is one of the best ways for you to support creatives by sharing, asking questions, poking a bit, you know, and just kind of getting other creatives to open up about their experiences so we all can learn from each other. Because also, I would say personally, I don't deal with galleries the same way you deal with galleries. I have a few galleries that I deal with, but it's like on another kind of, sculpture-based stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm quite shocked at a lot of the stuff that I've been, as somebody who has been essentially commissioning artists and work for a long time. And then I'm realizing what galleries make. And often the little effort that they're putting into it. And I think that is pretty sad,
Yeah.
personally. And of course, there's galleries who are not doing that. But from what I've seen, my little part of this, I'm quite like, wow, the more this is shared, the more also the artists can take their power back. Because at some point, you know, as an artist, like you are so allowed to thrive. Like you should be thriving. You are making the world a better place. And so it's a very important job. And therefore, we don't need more struggling artists. We need more thriving artists because thriving artists are genuinely supporting a better vibration. So yeah, I love that. And I think you have an amazing podcast. So I think that for anyone who wants to dive deeper into the art world, then Kate's podcast is super cool. And they can find that on like Apple Podcasts,
Anywhere, yeah,
Spotify.
Apple, unfortunately, Spotify.
Yeah.
um,
She's saying that because we already spoke about Spotify and their drone stuff. But having said that, you also have been doing this for a long time prior to Daniel, that's the owner of Spotify. Yeah, Spotify is convenient for sure. Do you have like, is it on video as well? Do you like?
yeah, if we do them in person, we put the video, but we put the video on Spotify so you can
Yeah.
like watch and listen at the same
Ah,
time.
nice.
We don't do YouTube, but yeah, it's a growing project. It's a lot of work, as you know,
Yeah.
like podcasting. There's a lot of time and energy that goes into it, a lot of admin behind the scenes, a lot of emailing, and so yeah, it's like something that I do a season and I have a break. But it's one of the most rewarding parts of like doing what I'm doing because I feel like it's the place that I get so much connection from.
Yeah.
I get so many amazing messages from artists, like,
Oh, wow.
you know, saying how much like they love to listen. And it is kind of predominantly painting based. Like
Yeah.
it's a lot, it's like obviously slightly less broad. It's more specifically about like navigating life as a visual artist, I think. And yeah, there is just so many unanswered questions. So I'm hoping that I can
I lo-
help in some regard.
I love this. I would love people to connect with a little bit about your journey. is beyond, we're talking about the future,
Mhm.
but beyond right now. So as a projector, you have a sacred authority, and so in your sacred authority, your intuition, you can kind of say that your intuition is your sacred authority in this way. So when you are invited to things, then things align. And so when I say that, invitation doesn't always, if you are a projector and you're listening to this, like, invitation doesn't always look like somebody sending you an email and they're like, we want you for it. The invitation can be like, do you want to have an ice cream with me? Right?
Mm.
Or the invitation can be like, I really like your work. And then you're like, well, I have, a gallery opening next week. Like, there's like, essentially an invitation can be very small and minor. And it can also be very broad and direct. And so throughout all these years of the stepping stones that you have taken, would you say that galleries and exhibitions that have been the most successful has been when people have seen your work, they've come to you and they've said something like, we want to exhibit your stuff? Or do you feel that it has kind of not made a difference? And when you have reached out to galleries, if you even have, I don't know if you
Mm.
have that been equally aligned?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think I would say that the most I think it's kind of hard to like have like a pure knowledge of like what is the most helpful, but I actually think the most like important part of what I've done is try to always show up as myself. And I
Yeah.
feel like people, and from what I'm learning, it's like taking me some time to realize that like people connect with me and they connect with my work as well. And so they're doing that mainly from Instagram. Like I do get business, like most of my business from online. And I do work with galleries as well, but it lacks the connection point
Mm,
because they're going to the gallery, they're talking to the gallery, they're not talking to me, or
yeah.
maybe they go to the gallery, they find me, and then they go online and they've seen my Instagram, and then they kind of have a chance to connect deeper. I do
Mm,
think that like a key part in people investing in art is being able to like learn and understand about like the story behind the piece,
yeah.
the story behind the person who made the piece,
Yeah.
finding connection, like human, like genuine human connection, not just showing up in a really polished, perfect way, but like showing, it took me some time to realize the importance of showing myself in like every expression online. Being silly, being tired, like dancing around,
Yeah,
like,
you love dancing. She loves
I
dancing.
love it. I
Yeah.
can't, like, I'm not a
It,
dancer, and I'm just like dancing and it's silly and it's funny and like sharing me like being really tired or like, I don't know, you're just like,
yeah.
you're being honest and you're being human and
Vulnerable.
vulnerable, yeah. And
Yes.
people, like, regardless if they're, a millionaire, they have money to buy loads of art, or they just someone who loves to look at art and doesn't have much, but you can connect with people on a human level. And I
Yes.
think like that. And it's really surprised me because I hadn't recognized that until there's been so many encounters with like, I've been on a call with a potential client and they're like, oh, I love like your horse, like the videos of you in your horse, or like I love like the pictures of you with your mum's jumpers, like the things that I'm posting where in my head I'm thinking, oh God, like no one cares, like why are you sharing this? and then you hear like from
Yeah.
someone who's about to spend $20,000 on an artwork, like, oh, like these people like those kind of odd things that I nearly don't share. And it's
Yes.
like that face of vulnerability of like pushing past the fear of not just posting the art, but posting like my life and the story behind it. And kind of like you said before, like my work is reflective of like my life and my experience growing up and my story. It's got a storytelling to
Yes.
it. And
Yeah.
I feel like that doesn't just stop at the work. It needs to continue through like the way that I don't want there to be a divide between how I show up in real life and online. Like
Yeah.
it's, to me, it's the same thing.
I mean, I think that is one of the biggest lessons for everyone. Like, Instagram can be real when you have the courage to be vulnerable, to be silly, to be playful, to be tired, to be all these things. And in that space, social media is great because
Mm,
without social media, people wouldn't know all these things about you. Very few people who meet you in person would know. And so it is a good space to use it authentically. And also, I heard something about authenticity that I think it was on the Zach Bush podcast, that authenticity um, is 40 times as magnetic as like love. Yeah. So when you're authentic, people are just so magnetized to you, which I think is so beautiful because
Mm.
authenticity is not good or bad in the sense of like what you show. It's just a matter that you're showing you. And so I love that. And I mean, I personally love your social media. I have a good time watching. I have a good time watching your social media. And I think that's very dope, you know. So we all
Yeah.
enjoy it. So just keep going with that.
Yeah, I hope that people connect with it. I've learned that people do,
Yeah, they
so
definitely do.
yeah.
And now I just want to share or ask you, because we've been sharing a little bit about, as we all love Mexico. Here we are in Australia. We love Mexico, and as I have lived in Mexico for many years, I definitely promote it so much. But we had a brief conversation about you thinking of traveling a bit, and so
Mhm.
Mexico was one of those places. And so I just wanted to share, you know, Katie is like on the fence of should I go or should I not go. I very much promoting her to go. And so by the time this podcast is released, you might already be in
I might
Mexico.
be living there, yeah.
You might be in Mexico. And Mexico is just so different. It's such a big country. You have so many parts of Mexico that you can go to and experience different things. And so I don't know if you looked anything up, but you know, I thought, because there's a lot of people who listens who have either been in Mexico, lived in Mexico, or also want to go to Mexico. So
Mm.
for example, my suggestion, you know, is like if you go to Mexico City, you go to Roma Norte or Condesa, you have a million beautiful places to visit for art. You have really good art supply shops. You have a lot of beautiful art galleries and kind of historical monuments and galleries are very inspiring. You have like Baja de California, which is a completely different vibe than the other parts of Mexico. And there's a lot of people from the United States who go there,
Mhm.
which, you know, can be good or bad depending on who
Yeah.
they are. And it's very beautiful. Like you have La Paz, you have all this place you can like go on a sailboat, you can like whale watch. I mean, it's incredible. Then you have the other parts of Mexico, like Tulum, where you have this jungle and um, the jaguars. I did this
Mm.
vision quest there in the jungle with
Wow.
like jaguars. Crazy stuff. And you have the Mayan people, like you have the indigenous that land, which is so beautiful. And then you
Mm.
go down to Oaxaca. I was talking to Kate about doing one of these meditation retreats, Hiridaya one, that is down towards Oaxaca, and you have like in Oaxaca you have this beautiful like indigenous art and craft, and you have just like a lot of material exploration. They're just in Mexico all over, depending on the region. They just have so much skill with materials, whether
Mm.
that is like painting or weaving or sewing or constructing or like chipping away, making sculpture pieces, you know, like you have like 6 or 7 types of lava stone in Mexico. Like,
Wow.
you know, for me, they love stone.
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
what? I knew of one. And they're like, oh, we have pink lava stone. I'm like, what? There's pink lava
Yeah,
stone?
like the
Like,
possibilities feel so much bigger.
oh, it's amazing.
Mm.
So, in case Kate hasn't left yet by the time you hear this podcast, please reach out to her if you are in Mexico, because I believe that Kate should go. And I was going to write her this incredible journey, you know, go and see these things, not as a tourist, as an artist looking for inspiration, action, and also resting, you know, not like a busy schedule. Like,
Mm.
you know, go to these few places and like rent an Airbnb and stay,
Yeah,
you know, just
yeah.
be with it. I don't know. Does it sound exciting?
Yeah, definitely. That's what I want. Inspiring and definitely feel so inspired by like architecture, colors, like but like also some
Mm,
peace and quiet as well. Like
yeah.
I feel like it's good to have the balance of both. Australia is great, but I definitely feel ready to like expand and again like find something I'm afraid of and like push past it.
Pretty positive.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I love it. And I mean, Noosa is a beautiful place where you have your studio, but at the same time, I believe just like in relationships, like one person cannot be everything for you. And so it's the same with
New
places.
places.
I mean, I lived in 6 countries now. So
Yeah.
six
It's a
countries.
lot.
So, well, I mean, with all that, I guess the reason I've lived in 6 countries is not because I had to, it's because I wanted to see different places, because I knew that one place can't serve me in all these ways. But what
Mm.
I've noticed on self-reflection now is that, for example, let's say that you are going to Mexico and you do this beautiful Mexican exploration journey, and then you come back here and you'll make all these friends and these connections. And then because of the online community, those people come with you. And so
Mm.
my time around in Australia this time, after living away in these other places, it's almost like I got these like kind of strings to beautiful experiences, and then they're all here with me now. So I'm no longer feeling isolated, even though I used to feel in the exact same spot that I'm in now. I used to feel so isolated, and now I no longer feel isolated because of those memories and experiences and people from the other cultures. Yeah, that's another thing that I'm thinking about, since you do have this beautiful setup in Nusa, like going for a longer journey to a place like Mexico could just be so evolving. No, I thought that could be a really nice.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I also think from a place of creativity, as somebody who creates full time, I realize the importance of like, I can't always be on output.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, we live in a society that like praises this like 9 to 5, like work ethic. And you really have to like recognize that that is different for everyone, but for me, it just doesn't work. And for creatives in general, you're such like sensitive, sort of deep, reflective people that like you just physically can't be on unless, you know, it depends. I guess for me, I really care about like the quality of what I'm creating.
Yeah.
And I notice that when I push myself to create for too long, the energy behind it starts to shift, or I become like, you know, I become deflated slightly in the experience of creating it. And so I recognize the importance of like taking this time and going away and seeing that as part of the creative. I'm not
Yes.
avoiding, I'm not pushing it away. I'm like embodying the travel as part of the growth for the next visual a collection of work. Like, one directly feeds the other. And if I personally stay too long in one place, I feel like I'm becoming dishonest in my work because I'm creating things that I'm not experiencing living at the time.
Yes.
So I feel like for me, I've really learned to see travel as like an integral part of the creative process.
Yes. It's all part of it.
Mm,
And I think it's so important. I think it's so strange actually that a lot of creatives, or maybe due to the financial aspect, that a lot of creatives still have this limited belief that they can't thrive as a creative.
mm,
And they don't recognize the value of getting outside of their comfort zone, or for example, if they're sitting like in a more traditional design role as a creative, they sit in this little office usually, or big office, whatever, but they have their little desk and they're just outputting work that's supposed to be
mm,
creative and playful and fun and whatever, and just like their inspiration, like Pinterest. And you're
mm.
like, what? You gotta get out there, try it. Have someone steal your passport if it's needed, but like it's gonna, you know, it's like you gotta go out there. Like as a creative, you gotta see the world. Yeah.
Definitely.
And on just a final note, if people wanted to be inspired a bit, like what books or movies or music, is there anything you want to share that you're like, oh, I used to read that thing or I watched that thing? It doesn't have to be
Mm.
something you're doing right now, but maybe there's something that you just know was inspiring at some
Yeah, I
point.
would say what was really beneficial was The Creative Act
Oh,
Way of
yes.
Being, Rick Rubin.
Which you sent me a copy of.
I did,
Yeah.
yeah, in Sweden, yeah.
Yes. It's an amazing
It's
book.
an amazing book, and also, like, as a creative, I don't love to sit down and read a book cover to cover. I like books that I either visual or I can pick them up, open a page, and be like, "That's what I needed to see today." And it's not necessarily something that has to be sat down and given a lot of time. And it's the sort of book that you can, like, read over and over and over again because it has so much depth and it offers so much new perspective in how to exist as a creative, and it's so inspiring and offers so much. And I feel like the only limitations we have as creative are the ones we put on ourselves. And I think it's so important to see self-development and self-evolution as a part of your creative process. And if you're feeling stuck, or if you're feeling like you're not growing or evolving in your creative practice, then maybe there's something you need to look at, like in your personal life.
Yeah.
The two, for me, I think are very intertwined, that often one reflects the other so much. It took me a long time to figure out that like there is no difference between art and life. And I really feel like, yeah, when I hit a wall with my work, I think about, okay, like what's going on for me? Or like I love to see my art practice as like a tool for like self-exploration. And yeah, that book really just like helps sort of like, it sort of gives you the tools to like help kind of change your perspective on things if you get stuck in a repetitive loop like we all can do.
Will do.
Yeah,
Yeah, Rick Rubin, such a total genius.
absolute genius.
And other artists that you like?
It's a hard one right on the spot. I would say Justin Williams. I love his work. He's a painter based in. He's actually just. I think he's moved to the Sunshine Coast, but he's Australian. Was based in LA. Love his work. I also love Danny Fox. He's like a painter, quite like a naive, a little bit dark. Camilla, she's Swedish.
We can link it in the show
Yeah,
notes.
Camilla, like stronger stem. She's also based in LA. She's this an amazing painter, super colorful, rich, like emotive work. Yeah,
Nice.
I feel like those
Thank
are the
you.
ones that come to mind. Yeah.
Well, perfect. And so we're going to link this in the show notes so that you can all look up this artist and, of course, dive into Kate's, both her podcast and her website and her social media. We're going to link all that in the show notes for you. Thank you for listening to Friends of Sublime, and thank you for being my guest.
Thanks for having me.
And that was Kate Florence, painter, intuitive, and host of Nitty Gritty podcast. You can discover more of Kate's work on kateflorence.com or follow her journey on Instagram, Kate Florence Art. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love you to share it or leave a review to help others find Friends Sublime. Until next time, keep creating from presence, stay connected to the quiet pulse beneath it all. Love, Steffi.